Welcome back to another edition of the Heart to Heart podcast. And my guest today is Dr. Sabine Hazan. That's Hazan like raisin. So Dr. Sabine, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Great to be on.
So I know you've been on the show before, but just for people who are new listening to the show, can you just give the audience just a little bit of a brief background about yourself?
I'm a gastroenterologist by trade. I've been doing clinical trials for pharmaceutical companies for almost 3 decades. And then from clinical trials, I ended up in the microbiome research because that's the new frontier that needs to be explored. So
excellent. So, and that's why I wanted to chat with you today. I know you are a gut health expert. And like I was just mentioning before the show, gut health is, seems to be kind of exploding. It has been really for probably about a decade now, but there's a Netflix documentary that was mentioned before the show. I actually haven't watched it yet, but came out on gut health. A lot of people are interested in gut health for a lot of different reasons. So I do have a few questions that I want to ask you about that today. But just before we get into it, so you're a gastroenterologist, you have so many different skills. There's so many different things you could be doing to help different people, yet you've concentrated your focus and work on the gut microbiome. So why do you think that this is so important?
I started off as GI and then went into clinical trials for pharma. And if you follow the history of pharma, it was the big trend of antibiotics and then now the big trend of biologics for every condition. And now we're stepping into a new, new clinical trials on fecal material, right? And when we step into, there are products out there that have been approved by the FDA of fecal material in capsules. So when you're giving that to patient or microbes in capsules, when you're giving that to patients without really understanding what the microbiome is doing, we're putting ourselves at risk and we're putting the patients at risk. So I decided to really try to understand what are microbes doing in the gut that create a certain disease, right? Why is there, why do we have Parkinson's, but why do Parkinson's patients have constipation 20 years prior? So therefore it starts in the gut. What microbes are playing a role in Parkinson's, right? What microbes are playing a role in, damaging the guts of children with autism? What microbes are playing with Alzheimer's, right? How does a person stop remembering things? Is it that they lost microbes or is it that they've had an overabundance of bad microbes, right? So it basically was a path of understanding because I felt the movement was heading into pushing these products of microbes without really understanding what they were doing. And if I'm taking that pill of microbes and I'm fixing C. diff, because that's the only indication for those pills, am I fixing C. diff, but then am I getting rheumatoid arthritis as a sequela or diabetes or, losing hair, right? So, these are the questions and I think the research needs to be done. It's all research on the microbiome. Anybody that tells you, yes, you got to take this pill, it improves the microbiome. Really, I think they're full of it, mainly because we still don't have, a validated, verified, reproducible assay that the public can say with certainty, yes, this is what my microbiome looks like. And here's the other problem. Even if we do have that assay, you don't know what half these microbes are. So people are going to freak out. They're going to look at and you've seen all these consumer products of microbiome testing where people are testing their microbiome and they're like, oh my God, I've got this bacteria. Time to kill it. Well, how do you know this bacteria is dangerous for you? And how do you know, it's a good bug or a bad bug for you, right? So,
right. Okay, so a couple of different things there. First of all, with regards to the research side, so it sounds like you feel that a lot of chronic diseases could be started early on in the gut, and that's where a lot of your focus and research is going. And you're nodding, so I think that's correct.
Yes, that's correct. And when you take the history of patients, and we take histories of patients, and you ask the history, and you go back to like the beginning of the symptoms. The beginning of the symptoms were always, I had digestive problem, I had gas, I was bloated, so it really gives you a hint that it started in the gut.
And then the other part of that too was, so the second part, you were talking about not just the research that you just mentioned, but also too in terms of specific particular products for particular conditions. Like right now, someone just takes a probiotic pill just because they think that they should take a probiotic pill. And I don't think they even look at the side. They don't know if they're getting bifidobacterium or whatever kind of specific bacteria. Do we even have any kind of mapping knowledge of, what specific bacteria would be, say, better for, say, psoriasis versus, maybe someone with mental health or someone with, IBS? Can we say that, we need 1,000 or 1,000,000 bifidobacterium for psoriasis, but 3 million bifidobacterium for mental health? Like, is that research being teased out, or?
No, not even. We're basically at the beginning to try to understand a signature microbiome to the disease. So we just published an abstract that we presented at the anxiety meeting in Boston a couple weeks ago. And we showed that there's a signature microbiome in anxious people, right? So this is just the beginning. We're just seeing a surface. We did, over 100 patients. Some were anxious, some were not anxious. We gave them a GAT7 questionnaire. Those that had a GAT7 questionnaire had the same similar signature of microbes. Those that had a low GAT questionnaire had also similar microbes.
Maybe just explain what a GAD questionnaire is for people, just so they don't know.
An anxiety questionnaire is basically a bunch of questions that determines whether you're an anxious person or not. So you answer the questions and then it gives you a score. The higher the score, the higher your anxiety. So the higher the score, the higher the anxiety. And there was a signature microbiome that appeared in those people that did not appear in the people that were low score. Okay. So we are just picking up these microbes. Now, I presented at the anxiety meeting, psychiatrists now from Yale, from all sorts of, and then I spoke at UCLA in the mental health to psychiatrists. So psychiatrists from different areas of the country are now tuned in to, hey, there's a possible microbiome signature. So now let me try different approaches to calm down the signatures. I don't know that the answer, the problem with probiotics is the probiotic specific for you? Is that your type of probiotics? When you look at people from different sides of the world and you look at someone from China versus someone from, Amazon jungle, I always talk about bifidobacteria, and, save the BIF, which is this important microbe in probiotics. But there's some countries that do not have bifidobacteria. So that's not their natural microbiome.
You mean like there's entire countries of people where the population doesn't have bifidobacterium?
Well, there's at least one population that I know of that doesn't have bifidobacteria in.
Where's that?
I'm not going to say because I have to publish, so a lot of it, but let's just say that there is a population in the world that does not have any bifidobacteria.
And do they suffer?
No.
Okay. Because that's, we're getting kind of specific here. Most people are just sort of are general with regards to like probiotics. Maybe they know prebiotics, bifidobacterium, for people who are really into probiotics, that seems to be the one that emerges as, make sure you get a probiotic that has the most bifido in it. But, according to, what you just said, there's certain populations walking around that have no bifidobacterium and they don't have any more disease. Is that correct?
Correct. And their balance is different. It's a different microbiome. It's a different signature microbiome. Remember, every region of the world has different microbes, right? You go to the mountains of Venezuela, and if you drink the water from the river, like the locals, you're going to get Giardia. But those people do not have Giardia because it's part of their microbiome. They're immersed into that region, right? So when you're born in a region that is highly, occupied with Giardia, you're not going to be affected. But when you're a person that's coming from sterile America and you're going to that region, you're going to get diarrhea from Giardia because you're not part of the region. So the idea is that, and you know this because you go to China and you know what they're eating. Look, the whole, pandemic kind of brought out the whole bat consumption, right? I would never touch bats. If you paid me $1 million, I would never touch a bat. But there are some people in some areas of the world that are eating bats. So what are those bats and their microbes doing to their guts, right? So
yeah, it's just very different because like if you look at medicine as a whole, like you would never say that, a different population needs a different amount of vitamin D or vitamin B12 or even a different amount, you take it to hormones, a different amount of testosterone or estrogen, per se. I'm kind of generalizing here now. But, for you, so you would just assume that, well, everyone should, want to have the same, microbiome. Everyone who's optimal microbiome would want to have the same microbiome just because, we think that the optimal, testosterone level is where we are at the very top of the range, but not over, right? And so people, I think, are trying to make that same approach to the microbiome, but it's just not working out. It's different. It's more complicated.
yeah, it's not working out because it's the same thing as, okay, you've got universal blood and you can give universal blood, right? But if you're A positive, you're going to need A positive, right? I mean, that's the best match for you. I think we tend to globalize. We tend to put the world as one, and we tend to think, well, we're all the same. We all have different fingerprints, and we all have different fingerprints in our microbiome. How can we possibly be the same? How can we possibly eat the same foods? You look at the animal kingdom, right? And you look at the elephant. The elephant is an herbivore. He eats the grass, he eats the herbs. And the lion is a carnivore. He eats the meat, right? You're not going to get a lion to start eating grass, and you're not going to get an elephant to start eating meat. It's just the way that they are. We in humanity are the same on the most part. Some people are vegan, some people are vegetarian, some people are carnivore because they have a different microbiome, right? So when you change that microbiome, you look at islands, Kiribati, which is an island, where people used to eat fish and vegetables. They used to be hunters and farmers, right? Now we've sent them chips from America, Coke, processed food. Now the diet in that area is the kids are morbidly obese. Diabetes is starting. People are living, instead of living to 70, 80, they're dying at 50. So what have we done there? We've globalized the microbiome. We've changed their nutrition. Kiribati is really a good example of what changing the microbiome to a processed animal food does to a population, when we should have just left them to hunt, to do their fishing, to do their farming. Once we've handcuffed them in a way, or you've stopped their productivity, their production, and you just feed them food, you've changed their whole structure. They're not exercising, they're not working. They're basically eating chips and Coke. And of course, the weight's going to go up and their microbiome's going to change.
And so with regards to, them eating Coke and them eating processed foods, like I know last time you mentioned that, and this kind of surprised me and unfortunately upset me because I love tacos, but you said that corn is not good for your gut bacteria. I remember you saying that. I think you had something to say there. Go ahead.
Yeah, corn. The majority of corn is altered, so it's not even real corn that you're eating anymore. I mean, I'm old enough that I remember what corn tastes like, and I'm from Canada like you, and we used to go to the farms and pick fresh corn, and it tasted like corn. You're tasting corn now; it doesn't even taste like corn. I mean, you can tell a food that has been altered from a food that is real. An orange should have the sweetness of an orange, and you should be getting vitamin C from that orange. The moment you do not have that taste, and ultimately what's going to happen with this alteration of food is we're going to even change our own taste buds. So it's a crisis, this whole alteration of foods. to make it mass consumption is a problem.
So if someone does want to improve their gut health, and we understand now that we can't really take specific probiotics for specific conditions like psoriasis versus eczema versus mental health versus whatever we're trying to treat. So what are sort of like the general rules that you give to people then?
The first thing is decrease stress, decrease anxiety, decrease stress, go gardening, go hiking.
What does that do to your gut bacteria? What does stress do?
It does affect it. We're having data that's coming out that's actually showing that, when you're under a high period of stress, your microbiome changes, right? And
Is that what happens to people with IBS?
well, IBS is it's a gut dysbiosis. I'm not sure we can say all IBS is stress related. A lot of IBS, it could have been, just the beginning could have been they ate that hamburger that was full of E. coli and they never really flushed out the E. coli, or the receptors are oversensitive, or the motion of the gut is sensitive. IBS is such a loaded topic because it may not just be gut dysbiosis. It could be the nerves. It could be, you hear of so many people that have, that have endometriosis and they have IBS, scar tissue, surgery, so all that plays a role.
Okay, excellent. A lot of people are going to want to know the answer to this question. I'm sure this is one of the big questions you get all the time about antibiotics. So, are there certain people who should just never take antibiotics or when I say never, I mean should really avoid them versus, people who may be, better able to handle antibiotics? Is there any test available like that or?
I think, look, rule of thumb is if you need antibiotics because you have pneumonia, you're not going to die from the pneumonia. You need the antibiotics, right? But then you need to start rebuilding the gut. And so fermented foods, sauerkraut, preserved lemons, my book that I wrote, Let's Talk SH.
Let's talk shit.
Yeah, Let's Talk Shit has a recipe of preserved lemons, phenols, all that, fermented food.
Would there be certain antibiotics that would be worse though? Like say with like moxifloxacin, which is, what I prescribe for someone who has like, severe COPD exacerbation. Is that going to be a lot worse than say like just plain old amoxicillin?
Yeah, so we're coming out with that data because we're looking at what kills the bifidobacteria in the antibiotic world and what doesn't. There are some antibiotics, believe it or not, that actually improve the bifidobacteria. Again, bifidobacteria is really for America. That was my cohort of patients that I kind of looked at and saw the differences between young and old. It is also, probably in Japan, but I need a bigger sample size in Japan and China, etc. China is actually not so much bifidobacteria as they have another microbe that seems to be, coming up. But we'll see, with more data, more samples from around the world, we will see what the microbiome of the world looks like. Right now we have like little specks, people from Zimbabwe, people from Amazon jungle, people from the blue zones, Greece, Italy, we have specks here and there, but we really need a bigger sample size. So, the more people enter our clinical trials and join our clinical trials and support our foundation, the Microbiome Research Foundation.org, the more we can get funding to analyze more patients and get a better idea of what does the microbiome of the world looks like.
So say someone just finished a course of amoxicillin, say they took 500 milligrams 3 times a day for 10 days, just a very standard dose. What would be your recommendation to that person for the week or two afterwards? And also too, should they be taking probiotics while they are on the antibiotic? A lot of people ask that question.
So, there's no data really, to show it. And then here's the other problem. There's no data that actually shows implantation of those probiotics in the colon, right? So, and which probiotics, and remember 16 out of 17 probiotics on the market don't even have bifidobacteria in them. And then the other 1 out of 17, you wonder if the bacteria is alive or dead. So my recommendation for people is always is not really to push probiotics so that they could become dependent on the probiotics. Although I do have some probiotics that I'm testing that I'm seeing some good results with. But, on a general, because I don't have that data yet to see it, I basically, and I don't read the data that's sponsored by the company because it's kind of biased. I like to see my own data, right? So if you're telling me this probiotic implanted and you're showing me before and after, I like to see it on my patients, because what happens is when I test my patients and they're on those probiotics and they have zero bifidobacteria, there's a problem, right? Because wait, you're telling me the data shows that this probiotic implanted, but then why is my patient having zero bifidobacteria? Now, granted, they could be killing their guts with something else and taking the probiotics. We won't know. So that's why there needs to be a lot more research on that. So for my patients, I basically tell them to do a good yogurt, to do sauerkraut, to do fermented food, to take some good vitamins. Once in a while, I'll add bovine to their protocol. We have a bovine that we test because it's a blood product with immunoglobulins. So, that's what I'll do to kind of boost the microbiome. And we're coming out with data on bovine immunoglobulins in the microbiome. So that's going to be published. We published it as an abstract, but it's coming as a manuscript.
Okay, excellent. So I've seen that actually advertised quite a bit recently. A lot of people are talking about bovine colostrum, and I assume that's what you're talking about. So the dose that I see a lot of people take is around 1 gram. If someone, just decided they're, listening to this podcast or saying, I want to improve my gut health, should they just step in and take this? Should they take it for a specific reason? Like, what would be the reason to introduce bovine colostrum into your diet?
So I introduce it when I see a specific signature microbiome, right? So your firmicutes are this level, your proteobacteria are high, your Bacteroides at this level, this bifidobacteria. I introduce bovine. Here's the problem with bovine. Not all bovine are tested properly, right? This is blood from the cow. So if the blood is, not tested, there's a lot of people out there that are concerned about spike protein. We want to push our government not to vaccinate the cows, because then you've got spike in the blood. So that's not a good thing, okay? Because especially for the people that were vaccinated. They were vaccinated, and then on top of that, they're eating foods of cows that are vaccinated. That's not a good thing. That's an overconsumption, right? So granted, I think the acidity probably kills off all that, but still, the blood, when you're giving blood products, you got to be really careful that they're not infected, that you don't have, Mycobacterium paratuberculosis in there that went into the blood. So testing of the bovine is very important. And no, I don't support any time if you're healthy, you stay healthy and you do exactly what you were doing. The moment you introduce something to be healthy, when you're healthy, you're getting into a path of consumption, of needing that product, right? Think about, when I killed my bifido accidentally, I started taking my vitamins, right? Vitamin C, D, and zinc to boost my bifidobacteria. If I stopped my vitamin C, D, and zinc, my bifido would drop again, right? So I had to take them for about a year to kind of stay in my gut, to kind of get off. And then once you get off of it, you can tend to be sick because you were dependent on those vitamins. You were running at this level of your vitamins when your body doesn't need that much. It was here. So you become dependent. Of course, when you're in an area where you're exposed to everybody, you're at a conference, people are sick, you've got COVID everywhere, you probably want to use those vitamins at those times. But anytime you start taking a vitamin, a bovine, a probiotic, a drug, you're getting your body used to that drug. And then you don't make the changes, right? So when you think of people with reflux disease, I'm a gastroenterologist, and for years, people would come to me with reflux. So my first impulse is to give them a proton pump inhibitor because, we started with H2 blockers that was only blocking half of it. But then proton pump inhibitor really inhibited and stopped the heartburn. people
And
felt,
for people who are listening, these are medications like pantoprazole is a big one here in Canada that most people prescribe just because it's covered. But go ahead, Doctor. Uh, sorry, Hazin.
okay. So anyway, so what happens is are taking the, when you are taking this medication, right? And you become used to it, right? So you're not going to make the change it. And then eventually you start eating more, you're gaining more weight, and then you get more reflux. And then you come back to the doctor and you need an increase in your dosage, right? Because you're becoming dependent on those medications. When instead you should have been working on your diet, losing weight, stopping the caffeine, stopping the alcohol, et cetera, exercising. So I think when we
Maybe just go over that for a sec, just to stop the alcohol, stop the caffeine, because I kind of asked you, what you should be doing to make it better, but I didn't really ask you too much about what you shouldn't be doing. I know we touched on the corn a little bit, but maybe just touch on a few of the things that people may be doing that are worsening their overall gut bacteria.
Well, I mean, alcohol, one glass of alcohol helps the microbiome. One beer could help the microbiome. We've certainly seen it in a bunch of patients. We haven't done the data yet, but more than that, alcohol is a sterilizer, kills your microbiome, right? Antibiotics, like we said, if you need it, if you have a virus, you probably don't need it. Now, it was different during COVID because everybody was panicking, but here's the problem. Did we, when you talk about these long haulers with COVID, right? Did we alter their microbiome with the medications we gave them for COVID when we should have probably just been more minimalist, right? So we tend to push antibiotics for viruses when really viruses, need really strong vitamins, in my opinion. So, this is so overdoing it of antibiotics, overdoing it of alcohol, overdoing it of drugs, that doesn't help you. Overdoing it with coffee, right? So 1 cup of coffee helps the microbiome, 10 cups of coffee doesn't, right?
What would be your limit? What would be the limit there on coffee? Because a lot of people drink coffee.
Coffee a day.
What's that?
I do 1 cup of coffee a day.
One coffee, and you don't recommend any more than that?
No, I don't recommend any more than that.
Okay. So we've talked quite a bit about...
People have that coffee pot, right? And they're like pouring it. It becomes like habitual. Get off the coffee pot.
Yeah, I think if you drink too much coffee, I think that's known. People just kind of get gut rot, and they need to go to the washroom too often. So if that's, happening to you, definitely want to look into it. We talked a lot about probiotics. A lot of people now are talking about prebiotics. One of the big ones would be inulin. What are prebiotics and what should people know about them?
Well, prebiotics, you can never have too much prebiotics, right? I mean, I really highly recommend prebiotics. It's the fiber you need. It's what you need to kind of sustain a microbiome. It's almost like the bed of the microbes, right? So I recommend prebiotics, and there's a few that I recommend that are out there that are pretty good, and there's a lot of them have done some good studies and good data. I'm not a person that kind of talks about brands because I don't want to be branding products. I think people need to really do their own research, and I encourage people to do their own research. And how I would do my own research is to look at the studies, to look at what was published, who did the publication, who paid for the publication. People need to be more researchers, right? Because the moment you're putting something in your body, you need to essentially know what you're putting in there.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're getting affected by it, then you shouldn't be putting it in there.
But I know, again, I'm sort of putting you on the spot here, but with regards to like inulin, like I know people can purchase that now, even just straight up on Amazon and that kind of thing. Like, is that a good... Again, I know you said just a few minutes ago, you don't want to introduce anything if things are going well, but maybe say things aren't going well. Maybe say you're struggling with your gut. Would you recommend, say, 1 gram of inulin in the morning, or how would someone introduce prebiotics to potentially improve their gut health?
I I honestly would not recommend anything because I really believe medicine is a patient-doctor relationship. And I would really encourage people to seek that person that is educated on prebiotics, probiotics. Not me, but there's a lot of doctors out there, naturopaths. I tend to see the people that have seen 20 doctors and then they come to me for microbiome testing. So I'm the last person you want to see. We're dealing with cancers right now to try to fix cancers with the microbiome. So this is in the research world. However, there's a whole world out there of naturopaths, of doctors, functional medicine doctors. They have them in Toronto. I met a bunch of them at the A4M meeting and the longevity conferences. So I would seek those doctors to help you because those doctors, and we have a bunch of doctors on the biome squad because there's a squad that I train doctors to understand the microbiome. So the biome squad probably has doctors in your area that you can seek that will basically can help you navigate all these problems if you have medical problems.
Okay, excellent.
If you give someone an advice, it may not work and then there's a liability. So I really want to encourage people to develop that relationship between the patient and the doctor. If we make it too everybody takes this, then we're going to, again, globalize the microbiome. It should really be personalized.
I really like that answer. And I know that some people are sort of looking for, a blanket kind of, statement or, protocol. But I think that, from our conversation today, you can tell that obviously the gut microbiome is very, very complicated, and it would be good to have, a conversation with a professional and to be able to go back and forth and ask questions. That being said, I am going to jump into another little bit of a general question. So gluten-free, dairy-free, this stuff has been, popularized a lot over the last decade or two. When patients come to you and through your research, have you seen that when they eliminate gluten or when they eliminate dairy, that sometimes their gut health improves or the gut microbiome improves?
Well, there are microbes that help absorb calcium in dairy, right? When you've killed those microbes, you're not going to be able to absorb calcium or dairy, right? So those people that are experiencing improvement once they stop dairy, it makes sense because unfortunately they don't have the microbes anymore in their guts. So saying that, we're going to come out with also celiac sprue. It's the same thing. So obviously elimination diet is the way to go. First of all, I recommend, and that's something I can recommend to everybody without any generalization, but anybody can do a diary, right? So what I usually tell patients is write the time of day. So 8:00, write the foods that you consumed. 8:00, you had eggs. And then, are you having any symptoms? Then 10:00, you're having gas. Then write 10:00 gas in the symptom column, right? So do 3 columns. And then by yourself, you're going to kind of notice the foods that you cannot tolerate, right? So I know with my daughter, she would have like little pains here and there. And I took a diary. And it turned out every time she was eating corn, corn, she was having abdominal pain. So I eliminated corn from her diet and all of a sudden she was better. Same thing with people. Maybe there is a food that you're eating that you don't even know has pesticides in it, right? Maybe there's a salad you're getting from a farm that you think is clean and organic, but maybe they're spraying at 4:00 in the morning and you're sensitive to those pesticides. So it kind of guides you. So a good diary gives you an idea because you're playing detective and you're kind of looking at it and saying, oh, you know what? Every time I eat, whatever, I'm getting these gas symptoms. Well, that's your first clue. Then you eliminate that. Now, you can go to dairy, you can go to gluten, and you'll feel better. But that doesn't mean you've solved your problem of your gut because the problem is you're missing microbes. So you need to replenish those microbes. And unfortunately, we're not there yet, right? So I have the vision of what's needed in medicine. I could see it. I could see the outline of all these diseases. And I can see what's going to happen in the future. The future is going to be you're missing microbes. Here's a bunch of microbes formula. Take it. You're overgrown these microbes. kill those microbes. So in a way, it's a biome blasting and a biome boosting. And that's going to be the future, but we're just not there yet.
That's amazing. I'm very, very excited for that future. It sounds like it's going to make a lot of difference because just like we were talking at the start of the show, so many of these diseases that people have do seem to start in the gut. So, it's not only something that's going to be treatable, but also something that's going to be perhaps preventable, which is incredible. And that's really interesting about, the story you said about your daughter. But I think people just need to, understand that and hear that message a little more, that like the very best thing is to keep a food diary. Like right now, we just don't have science that's better than, trial and error with your own diet. That's the very best way to find out, what foods you're sensitive to and what foods you can eat is trial and error and by keeping a food diary. So I think a lot of people need to hear that because they're looking for something a little bit more simple. And like you said, maybe we will have it in the future and that'll be amazing. But for right now, we just don't have it.
And one thing we discovered, by the way, is vitamin C increases bifidobacteria within 24 hours of taking it. So we are discovering, products like the vitamin C increases bifidobacteria, vitamin D increases bifidobacteria, zinc increases lactobacillus, so we are discovering not only what things are killing the microbiome, but also what things are improving the microbiome.
And so what dosages of vitamin C and vitamin D would you need to increase the bifidobacterium?
So those studies have not been done yet. We tested those patients. They were on high dosages. I don't recommend it again because some people could have kidney problems, etc. But in general, we are seeing some nutrients are doing something to the microbes, like the bovine, etc. So I think ultimately, that's what I'm saying. In the future, it's going to be not only replenishing these microbes, but also probably giving you the nutrients that you are needed to increase those microbes. So it is possible that celiac sprue, for example, is missing microbes and it needs a couple of nutrients to increase those microbes. We're just not there yet.
Okay. One question just to kind of, I'm not sure if you've been asked about this before or not, but I bet you will be asked about this a lot soon. Have you ever heard of BPC 157? So this is a peptide that people are using, body protection compound it's called. It's not something I've ever prescribed. I don't even know the legalities of it in Canada, to be honest. I know it's just that a lot of people are using it. I guess you could say they're getting it on the dark web and they're saying that it's improving their gut health. I do know a little bit about it. Now, most people use this more for healing injuries like their elbow or their shoulder. It's good for healing tendons, but a lot of people are saying that they're getting fantastic results with their gut. Do you have any comments on BPC 157?
I have no comments, but if anybody is taking it before they is considering taking it, please contact me so we could test your microbiome before and after. Because yes, I am curious and I'd love to see what it's doing to the microbiome.
Okay, very cool. Well, there probably are a few bros out there who are taking BPC 157 who are watching this. So hopefully they do contact you. Because like I said, the anecdotal, again, purely anecdotal, and we don't even know the, risk benefit to this yet. Because, Dr. Kyle Gillette did say that, if you take it too much, it may in fact even increase the risk of cancer. So, it's still something that needs to be teased out in the medicine. We need a lot more randomized controlled trials on it. I know I maybe asked you this about before, but with regards to fiber, so, I take psyllium husk. The reason I take psyllium husk is because, it's the one that's really been shown to lower LDL. I'm not like this massive LDL lower. I'm trying to like bottom it out, but I try to keep mine at least, in a decent range, like right around 3.5 millimoles or somewhere, where it's not sky high. So I do take a little bit of fiber. I take psyllium husk. Is that something that you recommend, again, in general to patients? Or if you were to introduce a fiber, which one would it be? Would it be psyllium? Would it be something else?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's safe enough and we've not had any problems. And I think throughout GI, it's been very popular with our irritable bowel syndrome patients. Highly recommended.
Okay. And so you would say then the doctor.
Again, your research to see where is it made, what's in it, how is it made, etc.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So you would say though that Dr. Zine, that psyllium husk is the one that you would recommend though out of all the fibers for gut health.
I mean, I'm a citrus salad kind of girl, but as far as brands, but there's so many out there. Yes, go try and see which one is less gassy for you. If you're gassy with the fiber, then probably not the right one for you. And then let's not forget, fruits and vegetables have a lot of, fiber. When you talk about sweet potatoes, when you talk about prunes, all that is good for you. So yes.
Okay. Excellent. And then another very, very popular supplement that a lot of people are taking for IBS in particular is peppermint oil. So I just wondering if you ever recommend this to any of your patients, if you had any success with anyone.
I mean, I had, back in the days when I was doing just regular GI, yes, I did try it. I'm more in the level of, rebalancing the microbiome. So I'm not using it anymore. I tend to find peppermint anyways, can trigger reflux.
It can, for sure.
Action on the LES, lower esophageal sphincter. So, I tend to stay away from that. That's just my own, but I can see how it can help. I mean, there's so many over-the-counter stuff that helps, people with irritable bowel syndrome, from charcoal to, but all.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. So charcoal has helped a lot of people, especially gassy patients, etc. But usually here's the thing. Why are you gassy? Why are you bloated? Are you missing microbes? And how do we replenish those microbes? Because to me, that's the first sign that, hey, you may be out of whack in your microbiome. And you may have, and here's the thing. You're drinking a lot of coffee, your high stress level, your bad microbes are climbing up, your good ones are dropping, you're out of balance, and then other viruses penetrate, and then there you go, you're bloated and you're irritable bowel syndrome, and that's the domino effect that happens, right? I think step back, look back at, for patients, step back, look back at your life and say, how can I make changes to balance myself? Balance my stress level, balance my consumption of coffee, balance my diet, eat the right foods, take ownership of your health. And that's one thing we have not done in America and Canada, because we are, so easily, pushed to do what we see on the news or in the media. Oh, I've got gas. Let me pop up this pill. Instead of figuring out what is the problem that got me to here, why am I popping up a pill? Let me correct what I've changed, right? And correct my life, right?
And I think that the mapping that you're doing is going to help facilitate that much, much easier, because you said right now, like, we don't really have the ability to do that. So I understand people who are sort of just like grabbing at straws. They're like, well, I know that I'm symptomatic right now, and I know that, yeah, I could, improve my gut health, but we just don't really have, the ability to really do the mapping of my gut health and then to, take the necessary steps to improve it. So I'm just going to buy some peppermint oil and go for it and see what happens. Like, I understand that approach. So, it just goes to show that the work that you're doing is incredibly important. I know that we only have.
And by the way, just to let you know, I have people that come in with, SIBO, and that have, bloating and dyspepsia.
Say what SIBO is for people.
It's a bacterial overgrowth.
Okay.
Small bacteria, it's bacterial overgrowth in the small bowel. And so a lot of people come in with bloating, gas, etc. And what happens is you discover that they're missing a whole group of microbes. And then when you try to readjust them, they start feeling better. So, and it's unbelievable, because I've been doing this a while now, of analyzing the microbiome at a research level. And when people see, like they thought, well, they're doing everything right and they're taking all these pills, and then they see what they're lacking of microbes, it's really an eye opener.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to have the test done myself. I might be interested. That'd be fantastic.
And then we can discuss it on the next podcast.
There you go. Perfect. Round 3 coming up. I love it. So I know we only have a few minutes left, and I really want to ask this question because I feel like it's been coming up quite a bit. So colonoscopies, most people, usually get them at 50 years of age. That's, the recommendation in Canada. Dr. Peter Attia, some other people have said that, maybe that's a little bit too late. Maybe we should introduce it at 40. What are your kind of thoughts on colonoscopies and when should people get screened?
5.
At 50?
45.
45.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and let me tell you, colon cancer is popping up in the young more and more. I remember I had a 29-year-old, I had a 22-year-old. These are young people. You're not seeing it. You're seeing it in the old still, but you're seeing a lot more. And actually, colon cancer has increased. So definitely something that right now the guidelines are for colonoscopy. Some people are doing those stool tests. I don't find them very accurate. So I still prefer to do a colonoscopy because if you have polyps, you want to remove them.
The the FIT test, you mean?
Yes, yeah. I don't find them, that great. And they're the same, in America anyways, I don't know about Canada, but the price of the colonoscopy is the same as the test. It doesn't really I like to see the colon. I like to see, when I do a colonoscopy, it's not just about prevention of polyps. It's also looking at what the mucosa looks like. What color is the mucosa? What tortuosity does the mucosa have? Is my patient having abdominal pain because they have a tortuous colon, like a roller coaster? And if I can't even get my scope to the end of the colon, imagine the food coming out of that patient. So colonoscopy is not just for prevention of polyps, but also looking at what does the mucosa look like, the color, looking at what is there diverticuli in there. Is my patient going to have GI bleeds in the future? What is the tortuosity of it? What is the friability of it? I'm going to take biopsies to look for microscopic colitis. I'm going to take biopsies to look for inflammatory bowel disease. So there's a lot more to the colonoscopy than just, hey, colon cancer, right? It's a diagnostic tool that really helps the gastroenterologist in fixing their patients. So I really, I've had my own colonoscopy, cold turkey, because I wanted to see myself what was in my colon. I don't recommend it. Although in Canada, you guys don't have much sedation. I remember patients were like unsedated for their colonoscopies. It's like an invader of the body stature. It's like this gremlin inside your body. So I don't recommend. I recommend sleeping, but it's a necessity. It's right now. These are the best tools we have to understand disease.
Yeah,
yes,
it's a great test.
Yes, in the future, we're still. I like to call it in the barbaric era, sadly, of doing all these tests and doing all these surgeries. The future is going to be the Star Trek era where you could just give the pill. There's a great commercial. There's a great Star Trek episode where the doctor goes by a patient and he goes, "What are you in for?" And she says, "Kidney dialysis." And he says, "What? Kidney dialysis? How barbaric. Take this pill and you're fixed." That's the future that I want, right?
I think that's the future that other people want too. Yeah. That'd be amazing.
I like to believe that's my research is heading us into that future. And that would be amazing.
And maybe just before we let you go, can you just let people know where they can learn more about you, the upcoming conference that you have, and what's kind of going on in your world?
So we are www.progenabiome.com, progenabiome.com, from your genes to your microbes. So that was the reason for the name of the company, progenabiome.com. So all the publications are in there on the microbiome that we do. All the research, there's a support for the Microbiome Research Foundation because that's what pays for all this research. And the last thing is all the podcasts. Your podcast is going to be on there. The last podcast is going to be on there. I know a lot of people, I always say little things here and there on these podcasts that are very, that are clues to patients or helps patients. So I encourage them to do so. You can reach me through the Progenibiome website. I get all the messages. I read all my emails. And even when there's like 1,000 emails a day, I still read them. And that's basically it. The microbiome research, the Malibu microbiome meeting is August 10th and 11th. So I recommend people to sign up for it. We are going to start with the agenda. Dr. Neil Stolman is going to be speaking. There's going to be some fabulous speakers on the microbiome, on fecal transplant. So, this is a future, and hopefully we can tackle little by little and understand. And unfortunately, this is a future that not everybody wants because it affects their dollars, but that everybody hopefully would want as patients when they become the patients. We all have people suffering, and those people need to have answers.
And don't forget your social handles.
Yeah, so I'm Sabine Hazan, MD, on Twitter, on Instagram. So you can always reach me that way as well.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Sabine Hazan, thank you so much for coming on the show again. I really do appreciate it. You literally answered, all the questions that I had for you. And I think we got through a lot of, really relevant and practical information today that a lot of people will want to know. So thank you so much for, sharing your knowledge and sharing your time with us today. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much to all the listeners for listening. And as always, I'll be back again soon.